With the first pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select
Trophy Chase, Tucson, Arizona.
with the second pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans select
Cody Smith, Houston, Texas. The fantasy draft room is now on the clock.
Welcome to the Fantasy Draft Room. I am Chase. With me, as always, my man Cody. What do we got in store for the people today?
Today, we are going to be talking about the NFC South, continuing our divisional series, doing a fantasy preview for all of the teams, all of the rosters within this division, breaking down every fantasy relevant player for you, getting into all of the details. Thankfully, we are now post 53-man roster cut down, so we get a little bit better of an idea of what all of these rosters look like. Not too much has changed, I don't think, in this division, but some interesting news and notes along the way for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We are on the South Series, but no better place to start than the Dirty South, and that is going to be the Atlanta Falcons in the Dirty Dirty. So let's kick things off here with the quarterback position. We do have Desmond Ridder as QB1. Taylor Heineke conceded that long ago. He was open about it himself, and it seems like Desmond Ridder is going to have the year. It's going to be his year unless he totally bombs, and then they have to bring in Heineke. But what are your thoughts on Desmond Ridder for dynasty, for redraft? Like, where are you at on him?
He's a guy that I've been out on a lot. I've kind of warmed up to more so recently, though. And the reason that I've done that, you know, we've seen this offense be derived, obviously, the Arthur Smith offense from the early days with Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. And the thing that I really like about this offense for Desmond Ridder to at least be serviceable. I don't know if it's going to contribute to good fantasy production, and I don't know if I really want him. You know, I don't think there's any way he's getting to a top 12 quarterback this year. But what I do really like about the consistency and what Desmond Ridder could actually do and perform well in this offense is it's going to be very centralized, and there's a lot of good weapons between those very centralized targets. This offense is going to funnel around Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts, and that's a very good three-headed combination to build your offense around for an inexperienced and developing quarterback. So I've grown a lot on Desmond Ridder in the past couple of weeks, in the past month or two, because I do see a way where all that he has to do is just make the simple throws. It's not going to be complex. It's not going to be hard. Just make the simple throws, put the ball on target, and let your playmakers do the work.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly where I'm at too. I'm with you 1,000% when it comes to Ridder. Haven't been in on him at all, but he is going to get opportunity. He's going to have the opportunity to showcase what he can do. He's not a zero with his legs either. He's not exactly like, he's not going to be Daniel Jones running, for 500, 700 yards, I don't believe. But he's not a zero on the ground. So I'm interested to see how much they actually utilize him in the run game, or if they just kind of let him scramble, roll out, and go. So we'll see about that one. But yeah, I mean, Bijan, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. I mean, yeah, you got Mac Hollins, Scotty Miller, but truly it's going to be a very concentrated offense, especially when it comes to the weapons that he's passing to. You mentioned when we talked about Treylon Burks, the talent, or sorry, Michael Pittman, you mentioned the talent of Drake London is similar to that, where it's like he's going to be a more talented player than he's actually going to produce. Do you think Drake London can be a wide receiver too, like a back end receiver too this year?
I think he could get there. He'd have to take he needs the target share to be insane though to get there. I do think he cracks that 1,000-yard receiving. It's just going to depend a lot on the efficiency of this offense. Can they take that step forward? Desmond Ridder last year was throwing at an incredibly low touchdown percentage, a 1.7 touchdown percentage last year in his 4 starts. So that's going to need to take a massive step upwards, closer to the Marcus Mariota level. Although he wasn't good, he was throwing at a 5% touchdown clip. The offense was efficient under Marcus Mariota. He was just making boneheaded turnovers as well with that efficiency. So Desmond Ridder needs to step up that. He needs to push the ball a little bit more, be a little bit less careful with the offense. But really, it is just going to be if the playmakers can make the plays. And so it's going to be up to Drake London to really take over as a legitimate wide receiver one. I think he can do it, and I think he's there. But it's a tough road for me to say that Drake London even gets close to a top 12 wide receiver this year with how much we consider this offense to be passing. I hope that he can get into that back end wide receiver 2 range.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I think he has the talent for top 12 eventually at some point, it seems like, but realistically, he's not going to be there anytime soon. So, I don't really, he's kind of actually one of my avoids in redraft. I just don't want to have to figure out which weeks to start him. Like if that's a wide receiver you're taking, even as your wide receiver 2, like there's going to be so many inconsistencies. Same thing with Kyle Pitts in redraft. Like I'm more in on him when it comes to tight end premium, dynasty, those things. Like I think it's going to be fine long term, but this year, I just think you're going to have so many ups and downs and where you're going to have to take Kyle Pitts in those types of drafts. No thanks. I'll let someone else bite that bullet for me.
Yeah, I mean, for this year, it kind of puts a damper on his dynasty value, though, as well, because I don't project him to be a top 5 tight end this year. And if he doesn't perform up to the level that we've been expecting him to whenever we lofted him up to tight end 1 as soon as he came into the league, what does that do for his dynasty value? Because then he's just any other tight end. If he comes out again and finishes as tight end 8, he's just another David Njoku, Evan Ingram, Dallas Goedert type of guy. And I don't know what that it's going to be bad for his dynasty value too. So I think I'm out on him in both formats. I'd be getting out. I'm avoiding in redraft, avoiding in dynasty as well, because he still holds more value than all of those guys. And I can still tear him down to what I think he's going to become, which is just another tight end in this offense. Even though I think he has the ability to one day get there, I don't think we're going to see it with this offense. And if Arthur Smith and Desmond Ridder are still there next year, the offense is probably going to look a lot of the same, and maybe even another weapon that they bring in.
Yeah. My thing with Pitts is like the injury that he had last year, the quarterback situation, just the way that offense as a whole was. I'm not going to be out on him in dynasty. Like, here's the thing, like right now, if you try to trade your Kyle Pitts, you're not getting a whole lot back. Like I have gotten some awful offers on the teams I'm trying to move Kyle Pitts in. So like right now is just not the time. If he pops early in the year, you're going to be in that tough spot where it's like, okay, he did it, right? Like he's got, 100 yards. He had, another 100-yard game or 80 yards and a touchdown type game. And you're just like, okay, this is the Kyle Pitts we wanted. Like, do you really think you can sell? Like mentally, like, do you have the dynasty discipline to try and capitalize at that point? Because you are right. Like, how much higher can his dynasty value truly get? Like, he can go back up to 1, I guess, but he's still top 5 right now. Like, he's still top 3. And so it's like, when you really look at it, like he can hop Andrews, I guess, and Kelsey will eventually come back down. So yeah, I mean, I think if he does start to tear it up, try and capitalize on that value again, because I don't know how many players have that kind of 3 first type of upside like he had in the past. I don't know if you'll ever get that again. No, but I think you'll be able to get like 2 firsts and maybe a kick in piece. Like I do think people are going to be willing to buy him in tight end premium.
Yeah, I mean the value could come back, but if it ever does, honestly, even now, if you can get pluses and tier down to a TJ Hawkinson, if you can get any plus on top of Mark Andrews, if you can get any plus on top of a Travis Kelce, I'm out. Like I don't care anymore, because if he does what I project him to do, which is just perform as a middling back end tight end 1. It doesn't bode well for his long term, because this is going into year 3 now. Like we need something more than what we've seen.
Could not agree more. So I do want to see more out of him. But let's move into the running back room here before we wrap out on the Falcons. Obviously, Bijan Robinson is RB1 here. We have Tyler Algier, Cordell Patterson, Avery Williams, I guess, mentioning, but it's truly going to be those 3. But I do think
he's on season-long IR.
Yeah, so I mean, if they want to bring in a third or a new 4th, they can. But it's these 3 right now, like CPAT, Algier, Bijan. We've talked about this ad nauseum this offseason. Like, I don't think that this is going to be just a workhorse Bijan role. So I do want Bijan and Tyler Algier. Is CPAT done? Like, you think he's finally like kicked the bucket?
I think he could work back in as more of a receiving option in this offense because you are looking at only Mac Hollins as your number two. We know what Scotty Miller is, and Kadero Hodge, Josh Ali are the only two other wide receivers on this team. I think he could work a little bit more as just kind of like a fill-in wide receiver here and there, play that role a little bit more. But as a rusher, man, like yeah, it's probably done. Maybe 4 snaps a game in the backfield, but even that would be high for what I project this offense to be. I think this is the two-headed monster now, Bijan and Tyler Algier. So CPAT's probably hanging on to that last leg.
Yeah, I do think that they're actually going to use him, like you mentioned, as more of that pass catcher. He probably won't be taking as many handoffs as he did the last couple of years, where he was truly used as like the RB1 on their team, even for a good period of time. Those days are dead. But I think he's in best ball, he's going to have some games still, as long as he's healthy. That's going to be the key for him. If he's not healthy, obviously, that's a wrap. But yeah, I think Algier, Bijan should have solid workload. I think people are sleeping on what kind of workload Algier is actually going to get, or maybe I'm crazy. We'll find out really early in the season what they want to do. But I think they'll both be good for fantasy. I want them both in dynasty. Best ball for sure. I think Algier's a huge, not only could he have standalone value, potentially, we'll see, but he's also a guy that if Bijan does get nicked up, like you're going to know when to start him, and he's going to get some touches.
Oh yeah, has to be on almost any roster as long as your benches are deep enough. At least on the top of the waiver wire order. If anything were to happen to Bijan, like we're saying, I think that is the conversation though of like, what do we project for Bijan year one? Because everybody is expecting that like 2,000-yard season, the best rookie year in the history of the running back position. And we've talked about it before. We just don't really see that happening. And it is because he's the centerpiece of their team. There's no reason to, in a year where they don't really have Super Bowl aspirations, to just pound him 300 times on the first year of his rookie deal, where they could lock him in for the next 7 years if they want to put a franchise tag on him 2 times. He's a very good running back. Want him in every format. He has the potential to be, I think he still has the potential to be a top 5 running back this year. But I don't think that RB1 overall season is going to happen this year. It could. We could be wrong. They could give him the 350 touch season, but we're just not projecting that right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is like, this is no hate on the talent of Bijan Robinson. Like, if they gave him that workload, he is absolutely capable of becoming the running back 1 overall in fantasy, because he has the pass catching chops. And if they decide to give him the rock on the ground 300 times, like, yeah, sure, absolutely, no doubt about it. But we're just not projecting that. Like, from everything we've heard, from everything we've seen, like, he's a very good player, and they want to make sure they keep him healthy. Like, this is year 1 for him. I don't think the Falcons think that they're in a situation where they're like, win now. They want to see what they got, and they'll probably make some executive decisions from there. But yeah, this ain't the year for Bijan. For people that are drafting him as RB2, 3 overall in drafts, like he is. I mean, he's RB1 in dynasty, but like he's RB2 and 3 in redraft, and like, have fun.
It seems a little bit aggressive year 1, but I mean, we've seen RBs outproduce their ADP. They're just typically not taken at the 2 and 3 overall in redrafts. So it's going to be freaking awesome to watch him run in the NFL, though, man. Like, to be just used as a weapon in the NFL. I'm so ready to watch the Falcons this year. Really excited to see what this team does give us moving forward.
Yep, I could not agree more. It's going to be a very, very fun team and a very, very bad division. So we'll get to see some things. And speaking of a bad team potentially that has, like, again, they feel kind of the same. You have a rookie quarterback here. Bryce Young has looked very good. Like, I don't really know how to sugarcoat it for him. Like, I'm trying to be pessimistic when it comes to these rookies, because typically rookies do not play well, but he has looked very good. He's had a connection with Adam Thielen. We've gotten to see that. Like, Miles Sanders he's unfortunately had his nicks and bruises already, which is not a good sign for a Miles Sanders. But if he's healthy, he's going to be a very good running back for this team. What are your thoughts on just this team as a whole when you look at this offense?
Yeah, they're going to rely on short game passing. I think they're just going to rely on the ability of Bryce Young to really just ball place and read defenses, and I think he's shown very well with that. The major issue though for this team is they don't really have very deep wide receiving core, and they're always hurt. And even the running back, like you mentioned, is already hurt, and their offensive line has looked atrocious throughout the preseason. And Bryce Young might be a guy who's taking like 60 plus sacks this year. I know he's got some good mobility within the pocket, kind of being a little bit smaller guy, but as well with being a little bit of a smaller guy, if that offensive line is getting pushed back into you, it's still hard to see and read a defense and see your wide receivers down the field. Baker Mayfield's had that issue in the past. He's just saying, like, look, I didn't see it, man, and it's because he's just a little bit shorter frame. I do think they're going to struggle. They're going to struggle this year. I know Bryce Young has looked good in the preseason, but I think once you get them on the field against the actual defense and against the ones, I'm not very excited about any real pieces in this offense year one.
Yeah, it's this is gonna sound weird, but like I can already see, like, if Bryce Young does take enough hits, I could see them just saying, you know what, we've seen enough, young man. You got a hurt rib, a bruised rib. We're just gonna keep you out the last 4 weeks and just let Andy Dalton take a fucking beating, because like that's kind of what's gonna happen with this team. Again, that's bold, hot takey, but like that's it could happen. I mean, Adam Thielen, he's had his injury issues over the years. He's healthy now. He's looked good. Jonathan Mingo, it sounds like, he's the 3 on this team for sure, but it's also one of those guys that he's going to take some time to figure out really what his role is in this offense. Like, he's going to take time to develop. This is not a guy that's supposed to just smash as a rookie. If he does, outstanding, but I don't have any expectation at all for Jonathan Mingo to be any productive fantasy player. And I think he's going to have some major ups and major downs his rookie year as a NFL player. So yeah, man, this is just a bunch of question marks at wide receiver for me.
Outside of Mingo being the only man remaining, because it's Adam Thielen and DJ Chark in front of him, like he could actually just be funneled targets because he's the only one remaining.
Forced into it,
yeah, and he just has to step up and has to be the guy. But yeah, like you said, I do think this is a little bit more developmental for Jonathan Mingo. Adam Thielen is going to be the one in this offense when healthy. He's going to be peppered with targets. He's going to be the guy in the end zone as well. It's just how long can 32-year-old Adam Thielen stay healthy? I hope it's for the entire season for Bryce Young's sake as well. DJ Chark, I think we kind of know what he is at this point. I don't think the DJ Chark of old is ever coming back from that one magical year. He's just a downfield deep guy. So he serves the role. Don't really have much excitement from him either. It's just Adam Thielen or bust for me. I'll roster the DJ Chark and Jonathan Mingo in some best balls, and other than that, I don't have much hope for this offensive passing attack.
Yeah, Hayden Hurst in tight end premium or in best ball. I'm happy to have Hayden Hurst in best ball. I do think, rookie tight end's gonna target his tight end that finds a way to get open in short and intermediate areas. But again, he's not going to be some world breaking tight end. Yeah, I think Jonathan Mingo's like, I guess, the wide receiver one that I would want to hold in dynasty. I do think Adam Thielen's going to have a much better year. So redraft wise, that's the dude I want. I do think Adam Thielen's going to have some good games. The problem is going to be selecting which ones they're going to be. You're going to have a 2 touchdown performance out of him, and he was on your bench. You're going to start him the following week, and he's going to have like 3 catches, 35 yards, and nothing. And you're going to be like, well, that was a waste. Just lost this week. Not a guy I want to roster just because of inconsistencies. But if you are in best ball, all for some Adam Thielen, because he will have some very good games. Number of touchdowns will be the issue, right, with this offense. Like, can they score enough to make them super fantasy relevant? But anything else you want to touch on with this team, running back wise? Chuba Hubbard, Raheem Blackshear?
Yeah, you mentioned Hayden Hurst. I do think he's a little bit lower than what I think his final end of season rank is going to be, just because he has to soak up some targets in this offense. Miles Sanders, I do have some hope for, but again, the offensive line is such an issue for him. I think he's going to take a lot of the workload though, and he could just be a guy that grinds his way to a RB2 season. Raheem Blackshear is the one that I would actually be looking at almost over Chuba Hubbard in some cases, because we've seen Chuba Hubbard step in sometimes, but at the end of the last year, I think Raheem Blackshear was actually outplaying him, and Blackshear has a little bit more of a passing game profile too. So he'd be almost the one that I don't think there's a separation as much as people want to think between Chuba and Raheem Blackshear for the number 2 role in this offense at running back. That's other than that, though, team that I'm trying to stay away from if I can.
Yep, hit the nail on the head there with the running back situation as well. I think a lot of people are still super in on Chuba because he's had flashes in games last year, but this is not going to be the case. I think Raheem Blackshear will definitely take more of that secondary work. So let's move on into what's probably the best team in this division, and it should be the best team in this division as long as they're healthy. The New Orleans Saints. And Derek Carr has this team has looked very good in the preseason. Like, I'm trying not to get too hyped up. It's always a team that seems to, overperform what people's expectations are. They have a good defense, and this offense, I think, will be very, very good as well if they can stay healthy. So Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara suspended for the first 3 games. So you have Jamal Williams and, of course, Kendre Miller. I'm just going to kind of read through some of this. Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, Jawan Johnson, and then you can't forget Taysom Hill, and then the combo of Foster Moreau and Jimmy Graham. So, like, there's weapons on this team if healthy. Like, if Michael Thomas is healthy finally, he's not going to be what he was, 3 years ago, but he can be a very, very quality receiver that is able to eat up some yards. So this offense is going to be very, very fun. What are your thoughts on it?
Absolutely love what this offense could be. I think we could see the resurgence of Derek Carr from the down year that he had last year. Resurgence to, mid QB2 levels instead of bottom, QB2, QB3 levels that we saw last year, and then getting benched at the end of the year as they wanted to move on from him. But this is one of the best cores that Derek Carr has really played with outside of just not having Devontae Adams. I expect, truthfully, you were talking about the wide receivers, and we'll just go into them here a little bit more detail. I don't have as much hope for Michael Thomas to really get back to where he was. There's been some reports coming out that he's just been that you can see the old flashes of Michael Thomas sometimes, but then you can see sometimes where he just does not look the same. I think I'd lean a little bit more to the negative side on him. But if he does come back and looks like Michael Thomas of old, he's going to be very undervalued in every single format out there. I would just take the bet that he doesn't return to form, and I'm the guy who's on Chris Olave. I think that he can be the Devontae Adams of this offense that Derek Carr had last year. I think Chris Olave takes that step into being a true wide receiver alpha number 1 for this team, and I think you're going to see the fight between him and Garrett Wilson for the best sophomore wide receiver.
Yeah, and this is like one places that you and I are very, very like opposite on. I just don't see it, man. I don't see it at all. I think he is what he is. I think he's a wide receiver too. He's going to be good. He's going to get, he might have 95, like he might be a high end wide receiver too, but this dude is not cracking wide receiver 1 numbers. I'm just saying it now. I don't know if we have to put anything on it, if we have to do any fun little bet for this, but like, I do not think that he is, and we don't need to do it right now. We can figure something out. I just don't think he is. I think he can be Keenan Allen. Like, he's going to be a guy that can run routes. He can, maybe not the Keenan Allen, like we always compare players to Keenan Allen, but he can be a 100 catch guy, but he's just not going to have any yak. He's just not going to. That is not his game. Yes, the air yards help, right? Like if he's running downfield, he has a good ADOT, like those types of things are going to matter, but I think like that's his ceiling. I think a high-end wide receiver 2 is his ceiling. And like when we really look at it and talk about it all the time, what's the difference between a high-end wide receiver 2 and like a high-end wide receiver 3? It's not a whole lot. Like it matters as a chunk, but in the end, whatever. So I do think that he can be good. I think Michael Thomas he's going to be the number 2 on the team. Michael Thomas is for sure. And I think that when we see flashes, he's going to have some up and down games, very, Mike Williams-esque, where we see that flash for a game, and the next week you're like, oh, you can tell he's aged. But if he's healthy and out there, he's going to be good. Rashid Shaheed's still going to take some opportunity away. He's shown enough. I think we're going to see some A.T. Perry, which is your guy. I do think he'll get out there and have some sort of a role in this offense. Again, small role. And then Jawan Johnson, of course. There's just a lot of mouths here that can get open, and we haven't even talked about probably the best pass catcher on this team, and that's going to be Alvin Kamara when he's back and healthy. So, like, I think that while there is the opportunity for him to thrive, I also think that he's going to be capped based on what's around him.
Yeah, I think it's just a difference of how centralized we see the offense and then the resurgence of Michael Thomas. I think that's really where we differ here. I do think that he has the ability to get up to that like 140, 150 target mark though. And that's where whatever, if he produces like he did last year off of that and the touchdown rate goes up, that's where you could see the step into that back end wide receiver one for me. But as you talked about, I think both Michael Thomas and Rashid Shaheed, those are really the only wide receivers of note that you should be rostering anywhere. As much as A.T. Perry is my guy, I need to see something, and he needs to have a lane open up in front of him for him to ever really see a true workload. He's still going to be developmental. He still would be a replacement for Michael Thomas if he were to go down, or more so a replacement for Rashid Shaheed if he were to go down. I think he more fills that role for this team. But as much as we see a lot of guys in the wide receiver core, the tight end core is just as stacked. Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, Foster Moreau, and Jimmy Graham could all see work. I know we just cut a bunch of Foster Moreau, or at least I did. Had some hope. It was great to see him come back from the leukemia, I believe it was, that he was battling with earlier in this offseason. To already come back is just incredible. But like you said, too many mouths to feed. It's going to be Juwan Johnson and Taysom Hill being the main two here. But then for some reason, Jimmy Graham will catch 5 touchdowns throughout the year on 12 targets. So it'll be interesting to see what this tight end room looks like. But Juwan Johnson for me is by far and away the one.
Yeah, and I think he's I've seen a lot of, or not a lot, but I've seen enough out of him in the preseason and in camp that like he looks good. Like he does look the part. There's a reason they re-signed him and put him, kept him on a deal. So I do think he's tight end one, and he's going to have every opportunity at that tight end position to potentially be, the number, I want to say number 3 pass catching option in this offense. Maybe number 4 is how, depending on the health of Michael Thomas, what he is. But yeah, I mean, Olave, Kamara, and Juwan Johnson, and that's going to be a very good combination for Derek Carr. And then, looking at the running back position, obviously Kamara is suspended for the first 3 weeks, but you do have Jamal Williams, you have Kendre Miller, you have Kirk Merritt, I guess. But
that's a new ad for me.
Yeah. So I saw that and I was like, that's interesting. But yeah, truly it's Jamal and Kendre. I'm excited for all of them early. Like, what are you doing with this running back room? I think both from a fantasy or from a dynasty and a redraft perspective, because I do think there's a lot of nuance here.
Yeah, it's been a rocky road. I'll go with Kendre Miller first. It's been a rocky road with him, kind of a roller coaster off season, all the way from whenever we were in the pre-draft process, our running back 4, running back 5 in the prospects at the running back position. Then he is dealing with the injury. The injury looks like it's going worse. He could miss. He's not even getting any reps with the team. Looks like it could just be a redshirt year for him. And then we see him come back magically out of nowhere in the preseason games, and he looks fantastic. He's running wheel routes. He's being used as a weapon out of the backfield. I think for the first 3 weeks, they're going to trust him to be kind of the Alvin Kamara role, at least in the passing game out of the backfield. And then Jamal Williams is going to be the hammer. Outside of those 3 games, though, I just don't see, unless he really, really balls out those first 3 weeks, how he takes almost hardly any snaps away from Jamal Williams or Alvin Kamara. Maybe it is Jamal Williams that he takes some snaps away, and they just want to get him on the field. But I think this is still going to be Alvin Kamara's offense whenever he's back. So I really only have upside for Kendre this year in the first 3 weeks. If something shows me more that he could take more of a role down the stretch, then maybe. But it's, for me, outside of the first 3 weeks this year, it's still just going to be Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams. Those are the only real 2 that I'm really looking at. If it's redraft, I mean, if you want to take the stab on Kendre early, I just don't think I would. I'd rather just let somebody else bite the bullet and see if they can try to get milk more than 3 weeks out of it. I'd still just sit with it, take the 3 weeks of Alvin Kamara, and have him be the monster that I think he's going to be this year.
Yeah, I think I'd take the discount on Alvin Kamara and redraft for where he's going to be going, and just hope that I found myself a solid RB1. Later in drafts than he would have gone if he was healthy, but not suspended for the first few games. Jamal Williams is the interesting one for me. I do think that, as you mentioned, he's going to maintain his role. We'll just see how good Kendre Miller really is. If he's able to just show enough to kind of take Jamal Williams' job, I just think that's such a long shot. We're talking like a 1% chance. They just signed Jamal Williams. They're going to at least run Jamal Williams into the ground for 1 year. Like, that's kind of how I look at it. And then Alvin Kamara, this is definitely his backfield. He has taken way too many carries. They don't want him taking 200 to 250 carries. That's just not his game. Like, if they can get him under 200, I think, and then get in that passing work. Again, Austin Eckler-esque, where you're talking about under 200 and then get a bunch of passing work. That is what you want to see out of Alvin Kamara. So that's kind of my hope as well. I do want them in pretty much every format. Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams. I want them everywhere. Redraft. I think Jamal could have some standalone value for you too. Very Mark Ingram, back end RB2, high end RB3 type of player is kind of what it feels like with some pop weeks.
Yeah, the current day, AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones that we see from the Green Bay Packers. I think that's probably what you're trying to look for. And Jamal Williams was on that team and serving it with Aaron Jones back in the day. Like, I think he just kind of goes back into that style of a role. So he's going to have standalone value. I think, like you said, both of them should be rostered. This is a team, man, that it's going to be fascinating to watch. I think they're going to be a very, very good football team this year.
Yep. Could not agree more. So we'll dive into the last team here. The last comparison I want to say is, it's very much DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams-esque of last year, but a much better DeAndre Swift here. So let's dive into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. No more Tom Brady. You got Baker Mayfield at the helm. Been some ups and downs, it seems like, throughout the preseason. I don't know what to make of Baker. Like he's a journeyman, right? Like that's what he's going to be. He's a journeyman at this point in his career. Can he be good enough in this offense just to have some fun? He can. Like, what do you think Baker Mayfield brings to this offense in terms of like how he's going to help potentially some of these pass catchers?
Yeah, I don't think it bodes well for him that he was in a legitimate battle with Kyle Trask for 3 weeks of the preseason before he was named a starter. But if we want to extrapolate only the preseason, there's been a lot of hype about Kenny Pickett, a lot of hype about how good Kenny Pickett has looked throughout the preseason. Just saying, Baker Mayfield in the preseason, 15 attempts, 14 completions, 106 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He's looked pretty damn good throughout the preseason, every chance he's gotten. That's all I'm saying. Now, I don't think that that's going to be sustainable into the season. We've seen enough Baker Mayfield to know what he is. He is not that. He's not an Aaron level Rodgers thrower of the football. He is definitely not. So we're going to see a major regression in terms of just pass attempts from this offense. Tom Brady was throwing the ball 700 times plus the last 2 years at age 44 and 45, which just amazes me every single time that I remember that stat. And Baker Mayfield, this offense is going to go through a major philosophical change. They're probably going to slow the pace of play down a lot. They're going to be, dummy the ball off to still the same targets, though. It's going to be Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I think Baker Mayfield can do enough with this team to make it better than a lot of people think it's going to be. We've seen some flashes out of Baker. It's just how consistent can he be through the year? He's playing with some of the best weapons he's had in a while, and those two guys that we're going to talk about, but it's Baker Mayfield, man. You just can't get too excited, right?
I mean, I'm going to get excited. I'm going to get the people a little excited. Like, I don't know how good he's going to be. I think he's going to have some turnover issues. He's going to have some awful moments and things like that, some bad games. But when you really look at this roster, when you look at this whole roster, you have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Trey Palmer. Who cares about the rest of the wide receivers? You have Cade Otton. Then you got Rashad White and Chase Edmonds, Keyshawn Vaughn, Sean Tucker. And I look at that and I'm just like, they're going to make Baker Mayfield throw the ball 600 times. Like, when you look at that, like, they're not handing the ball off to Rashad White, Chase Edmonds, Keyshawn Vaughn, and Sean Tucker enough to make, like, this team just not have any pass. Like, he's going to throw 600 times.
It depends on how
efficient, but
it depends on how bad the offense is. I just don't think we see the pace of play, and I don't think we see this all-out, air-it-out defense that we saw last year. I think Rashad White is actually going to grind out a good amount of touches. The offense is going to slow down and make Baker just play a little bit more efficiently than Tom Brady was trying to play the last couple of years. I don't see this team getting to 600 unless the defense is just abysmal and they're in shootouts every single game.
That's possible.
It is possible.
I mean, I'd say high 500s, but I could see him getting real close to 600. Like 600, like I could paint the picture. But with that being said, this is a Mike Evans, Chris Godwin show, like on offense. I do think both of them are going to be well into the 100 targets each. And I don't know exactly what that target share is going to end up looking like, but they're both going to to have their games, have their moments, even though it's going to be, again, it's going to be inefficient. I think I would prefer Chris Godwin just because of the fact that I think that his ability to get open and be more of that like safety valve is going to be there. But Mike Evans is still going to be very good. Like he looked good last year. If everyone's healthy and they use Trey Palmer the same way they did in the preseason, just kind of stretching him vertically, I think all three of those pass catchers could have a viable role. Like in best ball, give me some Trey Palmer. No doubt about that one.
Oh,
but
for sure.
I think both of those guys could be back end wide receiver 2s, high end wide receiver 3 kind of role, that kind of range.
Yeah, I think that's what you're looking at. I mean, last year they were 142 for Godwin and 127 for Mike Evans in targets. Obviously, with 700 plus passing attempts.
Yeah.
So you're probably seeing those guys more cap out about the 120, 130 mark each if they both play through 17. I think that's kind of what we would see for those two. But I think it's going to be highly concentrated around the two of them. The only thing that I'm really hoping for with this offense is that Baker Mayfield doesn't ruin the Mike Evans 67 catches and 1,000-yard streak. That's all that I want. Literally, fantasy aside, that's all that I want Baker to be able to do is to keep Mike Evans' streak alive.
Yeah, he has had one hell of a career. When you really look at his numbers, like
so underrated.
Just go pull him up in fantasy. Like just go look at his, pull him up on Sleeper. Just go look at his player card. And when you look at that, and you're just like, holy crap. Like this man has had 1,000 yards every year. And I think is this year 10 or year 9 for him? Because I'm pretty sure it's like 8 straight years of 1,000 yards. And
this would be year 10.
This would be year 10. So this would be the decade of 1,000-yard receiving seasons for him. That's just
insane.
I mean, it's underrated. I think it's underrated because, like, yeah, it takes longevity to do it. He's never been some like world beating, like, oh, he's the best receiver in the league. Oh, but like he's been very good. He's had a couple seasons that were like very, very good. He's just so consistent. Love, can't rave enough about Mike Evans. Love that dude.
Yeah, absolutely love me some Mike Evans. And as much as they're being discounted because of how bad everybody thinks his offense is going to be, I think there's actually some value still hidden within Mike Evans and Chris Godwin this year.
Yep. I 100% agree. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, I do think that Baker will throw enough to make them fantasy relevant, and people are just gonna miss out because they're like, wow, this offense is awful, or this team looks awful. So we'll see. Baker's never had weapons like this either. I'm not going to sit here and say like, I mean, he's had Amari Cooper, he had Odell Beckham. Like,
he's had weapons in some places. It's just never really come to full fruition.
Yeah, maybe we'll see him get unlocked so he can be dangerous again.
But moving into the tight ends, really the only one that's even of note here, like you said, is Cade Otton. Again, another player that seems a little bit undervalued just because of how bad everybody thinks the offense is going to be. Again, it's probably not going to be great, but can he be a mid tight end 2? I think that's very much within the realm of possibility for a guy who doesn't have any competition in the tight end room outside of Cole Kieft and Payne Durham. David Wells back there as well, I guess. But it's the Cade Otton show in terms of the receiving options for the tight end. It's only him. I think the most interesting thing here with this offense, though, is the running back room and what the split looks like. One, can Rachaad White actually handle the workload, and what does the RB2 look like?
Yeah. When you look at the numbers from last year, everyone shit on fucking Lenny Fournette. And I know it wasn't great, but Rachaad White was worse than what Leonard Fournette was. When you looked at it on the field, Rachaad White looked like he had more burst, he had more juice there, and he's younger. Like, of course he does. But like, he was equally as inefficient, and he was less efficient than Leonard Fournette was. So I don't really know what Rachaad White is. Yes, he's going to be the first. He's going to get the first crack for sure. Chase Edmonds is not the answer. I don't think Keyshawn Vaughn is either. I would say Sean Tucker of these running backs would probably be the one that I would want to roster most. Because I think that he has the potential, he has the body type to take those in between the tackles types of carries. He's not a pass catching weapon, but if you get him open in space, he can make people miss and he could go. So he's the one I think I'd be more excited about rostering as far as the RB2 on this team. But it is going to be Rachaad White's job. Like, it's his job to lose. And if he's not efficient or if he doesn't look great, then we'll start to see more of a full on RBVC.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. Rachaad White, he really wasn't great last year, but with the offensive line as it was, nobody could have really been all that good. Now, we also saw Ryan Jensen basically retire at this point now. Unfortunately, trying to avoid surgery with the knee and get stem cells and stuff to repair it, and it didn't work out. Looks like his career might be over. The offensive line is still an issue. It's going to be an issue for this team all across the board. So it's not going to be great for Rachaad White. I think it's going to be a lot of what we saw last year. Just what does the receiving role look like out of the backfield? I think that's going to be the biggest thing. And then what does I agree with you that probably the RB2 that I'd want here the most is Sean Tucker. I know we weren't pounding the drum for him like he was RB2 or RB3 in the pre-draft process like some people were, but we definitely didn't think he should be going as an undrafted free agent outside of the health issues either. He was still a pretty good running back in college, as much as we didn't see the true top 3 upside that some people saw within the rookie class. He should be a serviceable running back as long as the health issues aren't a problem anymore. And so I'm excited to see what he can do. I don't think he'll get first crack at that RB2 role this year, but I think he's going to be pretty close to next man up if anything goes wrong between Chase Edmonds or Keyshawn Vaughn.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I mean, I was one of those and admittedly so after his junior season going into his final season at Syracuse. Going into that season, I was very, very high on Sean Tucker. It was one of those situations where he had to smash again in order to be to get that draft capital, and he did not do that. Unfortunately, we didn't see that from him at Syracuse. It was a rough season. He had a lot of Chuba Hubbard in him. And so it's one of those where I was like, oh no, hopefully that's not the case. But again, hey, Chuba Hubbard is a serviceable running back in the NFL, even though he doesn't look great this year. I do think Sean Tucker has an opportunity to carve out an NFL role for himself, and at least get himself some opportunities as a part of a backfield. So that's, I think, the only reason why. Otherwise, Keyshawn Vaughn would be the one I would check out. I have zero belief in Chase Edmonds, none whatsoever.
I just dropped some Keyshawn Vaughn too.
Did you?
Yeah, I don't know what the RB2 of this team looks like, but they're going to need one. It's not going to be a Rachaad White 75%, 80% workload. Like there's no way he gets to that. So there's going to be a serviceable RB2 here somewhere. Just kind of a pick your poison of which of the guys that you want to take the bet on.
Yep, and if they can't figure out a serviceable running back, Baker Mayfield throws for 700 passes this year. So here we go.
Hey, bring back Lenny. He's still on the free agent.
No kidding. Bring back Lenny. What a fun one. So this was the NFC South. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. What your thoughts are on this division as a whole. What players are we a little lower on or higher on than you expected? Let us hear it. Make sure you do like this video and subscribe to the channel. Please do that. Follow us on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it, with our tags down below. And thank you so much for joining us here in the Fantasy Draft Room.